All right. I think that should do the trick. So welcome everyone to today's webinar, which is kind of a special webinar because we are talking, or I have the honor to interview, I think our very first Rencore Governance customer at Houweling from Royal BAM. So we already go way back, and I hope I can get Ed's insights around the whole story of how he sees governance, what he is doing with our tool, why they decided for our tool, and so on and so on. So with that said, welcome to today's webinar. Ed, very glad to have you here. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No worries. And with that said, I turned off my screen share because today we really want to do an interview. So I actually don't want to show you any slides. Use the time also if you have questions to put in your questions into the Q&A section in Teams, and then we will take them in the end. So maybe while we start, tell us a little bit about Royal BAM and about yourself. What are you doing there?
Yeah. Royal BAM is one of the leading construction and civil engineering companies in Europe. We have approximately 18,000 employees spread over Netherlands, UK, and Ireland, and still some activities also in Germany and Belgium. But the main focus is on Netherlands, UK, and Ireland. We adopted going to the cloud, I think 5-6 years ago, and I joined BAM at the end of 2017 as a Office 365 Competence Center Lead. And before I joined BAM, I worked 9 years at Microsoft in the Netherlands as a technology strategist for smaller and larger international companies and customers in the Netherlands. And I also helped them migrating even to the predecessor of Office 365, migrate to BPOS, if some people still know that it existed, and also to Office 365. So I do have some experience there. Main reason for switching was from Microsoft to Royal BAM was that I wanted to be more close to the implementation of technology and really be at the customer side of the table using the Microsoft technology.
Okay, cool. And as Office 365 Competence Lead, what is your day-to-day work at Royal BAM look like? What are you doing there?
Yeah, it's sometimes challenging because on one hand we're still helping in adoption and deployment of Office 365 or Microsoft 365 as we say now, because our operating companies had a different maturity and a different starting point from using Microsoft technologies. On the other hand, we also provide what we call the service. Some people have incidents. They first go to the service desk, and then if the service desk is not able to fix it, it comes to my team. We help with migrations. We help with new developments. So it's I have a team of 8 people, and we're doing all kinds of work. And now also deploying, for instance, Teams phone system as a new member of a technology stack.
Okay, understood. And so you mentioned that Royal BAM has opted for Microsoft 365 already like 4 years ago. So what was your strategy when you introduced Microsoft 365 to BAM? So how do you see that Microsoft 365? Are you more on a restricted side? Are you more open that your end users can do a lot of stuff? What is the strategy here?
Yeah, the decision to go to the cloud was made before I joined BAM, but when I jumped in, there was already a small piece done in the Netherlands. But our main strategy is to give people as much as options as possible. So we haven't excluded anything from our users, which also has a risk, a governance risk. But we think the platform is built to make people more productive and support collaboration, and that's the reason why we give them access to all the tools. Some of them were totally new from them, and yes, from my team, it is a self-service platform developed as a self-service platform. So we also try to give people as much self-service as possible. Which doesn't mean that everybody can, for instance, order a team site or a Teams environment. So we have some restrictions there, but there's no tools which are excluded from our users. And that's sometimes also a little bit struggling for the users, because some of our users want to know, okay, what do I use for which activity? On the other end, I think, and we try to support also the conversation of a team. How can you be more productive? How can you be more efficient? And what tools do you need? So not thinking from a tool perspective, but more from an end user and a collaboration perspective. What can we do there? And then you have a box with all kinds of tools in it called Microsoft 365. And due to integration by design, they all collaborate themselves. So that's still our strategy, but we still have some users who are used to do their work in a certain way, and if you make a change, they still want to do it in the same way. For instance, the home drives, we migrated some home drives of users to OneDrive, and still somebody said, but I cannot go to drive X anymore. Yeah, but why do you need it? Yeah, it's now OneDrive. No, I need to have my OneDrive named as Drive X. Yeah, that's also still happening, and we also have some other users who are still thinking about, hey, this is new technology, how can I use it? So that's the balance we have to take. Sometimes we give guidance. We don't restrict people, we give them guidance. Hey, this is the best way to use it. On the other hand, we say, okay, start doing it. You cannot break anything, so find out what's best for you and what's best for your team.
Okay, understood. And I think this is an important point that you bring up, and I see this I have regular conversations with a lot of different organizations, and that's kind of the status quo maybe that I find with a lot of these organizations, that they don't restrict, but they try to enable the end users, right? I mean, that's the whole purpose of having Microsoft 365, I guess. If you restrict too much, the end users won't do their work productively, and then they will go to other tools. Maybe you have shadow IT and all of these different things, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we don't block. We try to facilitate in a controlled way, because we now live in the cloud area. So if they don't get the capabilities and the functionality from their own organization, they will go to another cloud service, make a subscription there, and do what they ever want to do.
Yeah.
So that's why we don't block them, but try to help them and facilitate them, but in a controlled way.
Yeah, and this controlled way maybe is a good segue, right? Because when we talked about this point in the past, you told me that your question when we came into contact was, hey, how do I get a grip on my M365 tenant and create more visibility into how are people actually working here, right?
Yes, absolutely. Because as I said, everything is open for our users, so they can start doing whatever they like. But that also gives you, a little bit of an uncertain feeling what's happening in our tenant. For instance, how many SharePoint sites are being created, how do people collaborate, etc. And if you then take a look at the tools Microsoft provided 4 years ago and still is providing via the admin centers, it's still a little bit siloed. If you take a look at the Teams environment, you can see everything around Teams, but and you have to go to the SharePoint environment to see everything around SharePoint. But you need quite often we need a more integrated view of, okay, what's happening in combination, for instance, with our Azure Active Directory. If you have a team, we want to know if there are disabled owners for their team. Now, what we had to do is or take a look at different portals or writing some scripts ourselves and see what's happening there. So first create a list of teams and their owners, and then based on that list, we have to find the data in the Azure Active Directory, and it's all scripting. And a lot of people like Excel as a tool, but I'm more visually oriented. So I like to have some kind of a dashboard and see, hey, what's happening here, and how many violations of the check, for instance, I mentioned, do we have, and what can we do there? More integrated view was what we were looking for. And yeah, on the other hand, if you open up everything, you must be careful about what are people sharing. For instance, from security, are we still compliant? What kind of users do have what kind of license, etc. So a lot of things to think about and to have an idea on. And okay, and how can we get a more and better consistent overview of all the data and what's happening in it?
And when I remember back, I sat there and I tried to pinpoint the moment when we started talking. I think I told you when we talked about this, I think we had an early prototype, and then you told me, no, you didn't have a prototype, you had a slide deck. Like,
yeah.
So the first point of contact with you was, okay, I think together with my old colleague Waldek Mastikarts, who has now switched sides and went to Microsoft, we showed you this idea that we have had around Rencore Governance at the time. That was the slide deck, right? And then I kind of was amazed by all the time you also gave us and all the feedback you gave us to kind of come to the version that we have currently. But can you tell us a little bit? So what was the vision you bought into? Because you saw a slide deck and it certainly didn't look anything like what Rencore Governance looks like now, but what was kind of the vision you bought into by that time? What did you see there, and what were kind of your pains that you wanted to overcome?
Where we ran into, we heard just by email and getting questions that people were doing all kinds of stuff, and some people were trying to use tools. And what we said, okay, and what's now happening in our tenant? How much do we have from this and that? And we've been looking, okay, how can we get a better overview of what's happening? And also thinking about, we have some ideas around governance. How can we implement these? And we've been looking in the market, and there was hardly any other tool which could provide a full, consistent overview based on the data in the tenant, which was quite useful for us. There were some tools like I think it's called AdminDroid or something like that, but it's a report you can fire off, and then you get a list, and okay, now it's a list. But by discussing the slides, it was about, hey, we think we are able to collect the data. That's what was discussed about, and how can we more visualize that data in an actionable way, so that you know, okay, this is happening and this is what you can do with it. And that was the first time I said, hey, but this is going to help us. And I agree, it was still slideware, but on the other end, it also gave us the opportunity to discuss with you and really discuss our needs and what we would like and what would be helpful for us. So yeah, it's investing in my opinion from both sides. You seeing the opportunity to build a new product, but on the other hand, we could also speak about what we needed and what we saw happening in the market. But mainly, collecting the data of the whole tenant and make it more visible and help us with actions. That was the first step. Then you start building it, etc. And we did a pilot and all the next steps. But and there came additional functionality also by having the conversations. You also kept us thinking, okay, and what do you need and how do you need it and what do you want to do with the data, etc. So it was a two-way collaboration.
Yeah, and we I'm so thankful that you gave us this opportunity to build this pilot and the prototypes and move on from there. And I just wanted to mention that this is still how we like to work, and Ed and us still have these regular sync calls in which we try to come up with more functionality and get more feedback. And everyone else here on this call is obviously also invited, and we do this with all the customers that are using Rencore Governance, because it's so important for us to do customer-centric work here. We can only build what you guys give us as ideas, and then do that like this. So
I remember another interesting discussion we had. You said, okay, we want to do something with sharing of that information. So you had some thoughts about it, and you asked me what kind of ideas do you have around this topic. So I start talking with you and say, hey, I think this and this would be nice. And he said, oh, hey, that's a total different angle from the same topic. and that made also you change, not because we wanted it, but also by having the conversation.
Yeah.
And how can we do best? So yeah, that's also what I like, and we still have, as you said, conversations about because we are thinking about, oh, but if we have this data, it would be nice if we could also add this data to it, or get more information on this. Or can you add additional fields so we can do some things better together? So yeah.
Okay, cool. So let me quickly sum up. So what I heard from you is, before we got into touch, you had this kind of scattered approach to monitoring governance, insights like PowerShell scripts, admin centers, trying to crunch data, not that very visually, and then we came into play. So now let's move over to the current state. So with us now, you get way more visibility into what's happening within your tenant. What kind of discussions does this visibility spark? Could you tell us a little bit about certain use cases that you have already set up in Rencore Governance for different topics? What kind of discussions are you having because you're seeing certain things? Maybe you can give us some examples there.
Yeah, of course I can. The first discussion is mainly focused on my team. I already mentioned we see, for instance, teams with 2 disabled owners, and we think, hey, that's not good. And it's a check we build, and that's not good. And the next conversation is, okay, but how do we want to fix it? And that's sometimes different. Some people say, hey, but we first have to write a message or an adaptive card in the general channel of the team, so which it mentions all the participants in the team. Say, hey, we need a new owner, or some other thing. So it facilitates a discussion also in my team. We think it's not good to have teams with only disabled owners. But how are we going to fix it?
Disabled owner accounts, right?
Yeah, disabled owner accounts, because that's in our opinion not good. So what should we do then, and what should we normally as an individual do, and can we automate it? And that's also what we like in the governance tooling. It's not only collecting data, building checks, but also helping us to automate and let's say clean up or be more strict to our own governance rules. So that's use case which and then we have an intense discussion, but I think it's a good discussion, because then we say, okay, this is the way how we can fix it, and this is what we will doing. Another use case, for instance, and that's was one of the first use cases we had. If somebody leaves the company, his account will be disabled, and after a few months his account will be fully deleted. But in our process, we never had the idea, okay, if somebody leaves the company and his account is disabled, he, for instance, doesn't need any access to Office anymore, but we need to retain his mailbox. So there should be a license there, but no expensive license, including Office. Okay, and what can we do there? So it also gave a discussion with our JML, joiner mover leaver process owners about, hey, and how are we going to make these steps, and can we do some automation there? From a security perspective, it's visible how many files are shared, on which sites are they shared, with whom are they shared. That's also interesting information, because security on data is also important. It's important for every company. So all kinds of other teams within our company started to get involved in discussions and conversations. Hey, this is what we see. Do you think it's good? Sometimes we say, hey, from our perspective, we need some more clarification, for instance, from the compliance team, and what can we do there, and have a conversation also with them on compliance. And they also started thinking about, hey, we used to have it on a file server, and we knew what's happening there, but now it's in the cloud, which still should be safe, but we have less visibility on what's happening there. So it's not only in my team, it's also with other teams. Hey, what's happening here? What can we do here? And sometimes we still get a request for scripts. And somebody says, for instance, we want to monitor if you have an application, it has a client secret, let's call it a password, and which has a temporary lifetime. What can we do to prevent the secret being invalid? And then, okay, we need to generate a new secret, instead of, hey, a few weeks up front, we get a message, hey, this is gonna expire in the coming weeks. So also from that perspective, a more proactive way of working. We have another use case with, for instance, OneDrive, where we see the OneDrive is in our company limited to 1 terabyte. And we see some people use it really as a file storage. We don't know for what, but who is reaching, for instance, the 85% usage of his 1 terabyte. And we can wait until he reaches 1 terabyte and has to call the service desk and say, hey, I get an issue with the synchronization of my known folders, for instance. Or can we do some proactive work and say, hey, we see that you're reaching the 85%. Somebody reaches out to you, or we send you an email, and hey, you're reaching this point in time, please clean up or do something else, or is there another way we can help you? So it's from a governance perspective, we're looking at things. From a savings perspective, a cost perspective, we're looking at things, security perspective, compliance perspective, but also from a proactive service delivery perspective. So, and based on getting more information, it also sparks the discussions. We're now much further also in having the conversations than we were when we started with the first prototype and say, okay, hey, oh, this is interesting. And second, I can assure you we don't have a big book with all the governance rules within our company. Some people maybe think so, but it's not. Sometimes you say, okay, hey, we see this happening, but yeah, we don't have any policy or any governance rule for this. We should write one to make clear for everybody this is something you should do or shouldn't do, or any way you like it. So it's having all kinds of discussions and conversations and helps us in multiple ways to do our job a little bit better.
Yeah, so it's an evolving topic, and I like that you have insights and then you do discussions and then you can come up with new ideas and define new policies and these kind of things. And you mentioned that you have discussions with different teams about different topics. So as I understand it, you kind of, when I refer to you, you are our kind of internal champion that champions that tool within BAM, right? But how do you do these discussions with these other teams? Because I think that might be interesting also from a process perspective for other people that are listening in here, who might want to get other departments involved in these discussions. How are you normally doing this? Are you inviting them into the tool and then you discuss stuff with them, or are you looking into the tool, you set up meetings, you bring something there, you look at the data and then you discuss? Or
multiple ways. For instance, with our global risk and compliance team, we're talking about sensitivity labeling. How can we get people labeling documents? And then we have a conversation on that and what are the definitions of the different labels. And in the same meeting, I say, hey, and our governance tool is also is working on reporting on, let me say, violations or information around sensitivity labeling. And then I show them some information. I said, and I can give you access to this piece of all the data, and we can build dashboards for you, etc. So you can manage and monitor what's happening, for instance, regarding sensitivity labeling. That's as a follow-up from a different topic we are already discussing with, for instance, our global risk and compliance team. On the other hand, we still see, we do analyze all kinds of data, and sometimes we say, hey, let's bring this to the table because we think this might be interesting, for instance, for our security team. And sometimes they come to us and say, hey, can you build us a script and give us information about XYZ? And then sometimes we'll build something in our new governance tooling, in our Rencore governance tooling for you, and then show that first to them and say, is this what you need? Yes. And the next stage is that we'll give them real-time access to the tooling, but in a limited way. Because if we don't, and we give a lot of people who are interested in using the tooling, we need a governance tool on top of the Rencore governance tool, because everybody can start building his own checks, his own dashboards, etc. And at the current point in time, we still try to keep it in control. So we provide them with their requirements and say, okay, give us your requirements. We will build you a dashboard or a report or a check or anything you like, and give you access to the portal. but you only get reader access, and you're not able to configure all kinds of things. So it's multiple, sometimes based on the topic, sometimes on the requirement, and sometimes based on things we see. And then we reach out to them and say, hey, this is what we have. And sometimes, yeah, you just have to sell it internally. For instance, with our IT management team, before we got the signature and the approval to close the contract with Rencore, I did a demo for the whole IT management team. And I said, hey, this is what we would like to have. This is the reason why we needed it. The governance, seeing what's happening, etc. I gave them some real life examples, because we first did the POC with you, and based on the POC, we said, hey, this is what we see, and this is what we might how it might help us, and that also convinced them. And now some people are saying, hey, we're now half year later, give us an update on what's happening there, and do you have some additional new insights for us? I had a meeting with our enterprise architecture team, who are thinking about, for instance, integrations and what you do here, and sometimes about tooling we need, additional need, and say, hey, how we're going to solve this? Quite often I say, we do have the Rencore governance environment. This already gives the data, and maybe we should build an export for you, or do something else, or a monthly reporting, or whatever you like. And sometimes I have to hold them off and say, okay, I know it's on the roadmap, so please wait for 2 months or so, and then it will be automatically here. So don't invest in people building their own reports and scripting, etc. Just wait, because you will be overtaken by for instance, Rencore governance.
Yeah, cool. I have one point I wanted to touch upon, and you just mentioned it briefly. the time when you try to sell Rencore governance internally, right? Because I mean, that's what most of the people I talk to are facing. I normally talk to IT admin teams, platform owners, and then they need to convince upper management that they should have the budget to buy a solution like us, right? And I thought that was quite unique in that sense of how you did that once you had to convince upper management about buying Rencore governance. Maybe you can touch upon this, how you approach this, because I think that's quite helpful there for people as well to understand.
Yeah. I started with our own internal procurement team. 2 reasons. I had to involve them just to close a contract, but secondly, they're also responsible, for instance, in buying Microsoft licenses. And if you want to do an investment in tooling or license, etc., we also try to build a business case for it. So, because and our CIO won't sleep any minute longer if I tell him, hey, we had 10,000 sites, 10,000 SharePoint sites, we've now been able to reduce them to 9,000. And so, is there any benefit for BAM or a cost? Or so it's difficult to do it based on, yeah, we can reduce the number of sites, for instance, because we can now archive them, or whatever you like. But what they are sensitive for is money. So we started to discuss with the procurement team and say, okay, what would you need? What insights would you need? And see how we can make the tangible savings by implementing this tooling. Because if we've made the first step and see, hey, it also has a financial benefit, and we can work on that, then in year 2 and 3, I can say, okay, hey, and now we reduce the number of sites, get a better grip, and that will resonate much better than starting that conversation. So I started with the procurement team, and what we first did is looking at, I already touched a little bit on the example of disabled users who still have a license connected. And then we could easily calculate, because we have a lot of people coming in and out. That's part of our business. So we could make a good business case and say, okay, if we see this, we can reuse our spend at the Microsoft side, buying less licenses. So if we have done that, then we can also make a good business case to implement the Rencore tooling, because that is helping us. So that's where we started the business case, and we had a few conversations and a few examples, and then we said, hey, to be honest, we had such a good business case that in a few months we already had the cost of the 1-year subscription of Rencore governance already got back. So and then people say, hey, but if this works fine. Do you have more examples? So then we found some other less larger discussions and savings on the licensing side. But then people start also seeing the value for BAM from a financial perspective, and that combined with other things like, the security team, we now have teams, we have disabled owners, and we're going to fix this because we have now in an overview of which teams do we have with disabled owners and what can we do on it. And then it started, evolving and evolving. And maybe I should say I abused also one of the statements of our the leader of our security team. He always says, "We don't know what we don't know." And I said, we don't know what we don't know, but we now at least know a little bit more than we used to know or didn't know. And I also gave him some insights. But in this case, we started from the procurement side. And to be honest, the first year of subscription we paid for Rencore Governance was, let me say, paid by Microsoft because we made a saving on that side on licensing. So and that resonates very well with the procurement team.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
So that's very nice. So the return of investment, you said that you had the return of investment after some months already by saving on Microsoft licenses for licenses that you paid for that weren't needed. What would you consider to be on top of that return of investment? Where do you see the most return of investment? I think we talked about saving time, right? Freeing up that IT admin team. Maybe you can explore a little bit this scenario there.
Yes, and I have an actual example. We've sold one of our operating companies in Germany to another party. And then all kinds of questions came up. But how many SharePoint sites do they own? And we have to migrate them. And what's the storage size of the OneDrives of the employees? And all kinds of these questions. And it was quite easily to build. We abused the check component in Rencore Governance. Say, okay, show me all employees with a specific email extension. And based on that, show the size of the OneDrives, and we could easily export them and deliver them to the other party. We could show them easily who is the owner with a specific, where the owner has a specific email extension, which sites are that. So these sites we assume have to be migrated, but also do it the other way around and say, okay, we have an international company with people collaborating together with them. Where do those employees have access rights to SharePoint sites they don't own? But maybe there's valuable information for them. When the first question came in, I said to somebody, okay, I will share my screen and show you. And within 50 minutes, we had the first reports available and the first data for them available. And they said, yeah, but this is really cool tooling. And they saw the ease of building checks and gathering information and also being able to share them and export them, etc. And it was the best use case I had, or the best ROI case I had in the last weeks. Next to all kinds of other questions of people asking, can you run a script for me to do this and this and this?
Yeah.
And we also see an opportunity now to maybe stop running scripts. For instance, it's on the roadmap about MFA enrollment, which is a hot topic in our company. We now have some scripts and share some Excel data, and based on the Excel data, we're building some pivot tables, etc. Yeah, once it is included in the Rencore scanning, I can easily build a dashboard and share and make the dashboard available for all kinds of people who's interested in our company. So the speed of delivering information, because we have a lot of information already there, and more services will be added on the roadmap. And stop building scripts, but get one version of the truth, Rencore Governance.
Yeah. Nice, cool. Yeah, so that, by the way, I think this MFA feature will be shipped in the next 2 weeks, so that will be cool.
I was not pushing you for giving roadmap information.
No,
based on our conversations,
I talked internally about that topic anyways today. I thought I would just go live on the record with that. Yeah, cool, perfect. And you told me, I think, when we tried to quantify the time saving, I think you told me that you think you could save the equivalent of one admin per year, so that doesn't that doesn't mean that you kick one IT admin out of your team, but they can do more
They can do
meaningful
different
work.
work.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
And we have to invest first some time too before we can do something.
Yeah.
Yeah, also the automation part, which we're now more focusing on. We see a lot of data, okay, and what are we going to do with it? Do the automation part. That's also will save us a lot of money, because otherwise we should have done things manually or building scripts, etc. So that should also increase the ROI of the tooling.
Yeah.
So yeah, and we have enough other things to do. So we won't fire anybody by introducing Rencore Governance, but yeah, make some work more interesting. For instance, build interesting power apps or yeah, whatever you want.
Yeah.
And also from another, I did a demo for the enterprise architecture team, and I told them, yeah, new services will be added like dynamic CRM, and people saying, hey, if that information is added, I would like to have access. And also new questions coming up from the procurement team say, oh, but if we have dynamic CRM included, can we also see which components of our licensing are being used? Unfortunately, Microsoft doesn't share that information yet, but new requests are already coming because people see, hey, but this is interesting information for us, and this helps us. So they reach out to us.
Yeah, perfect. All right. So we already talked about who has access to the system. So you already explained to me that you sometimes give access to people, but then make it just read only so that they don't, because I totally get this, right? You have your IT admin team, you're the operational people, you should define what checks you set up and these kind of things. And then you probably don't want now to invite 10 other people that start building their own stuff and then messing everything up. So you,
yeah, and avoid also that we spend energy on
Mhm.
3 or 4 people who are building the same type of checks, while we can do and say, okay, hey, yeah, this is a good question. We build a check and make it available for everybody, or at least every interested person in our company. So also avoid spending time, because when people like tools, they start playing with tools more and more and more. So yeah, we should better get also be careful with our own time, because we have more work than we have resources. So would be a good benefit also.
Yeah. All right. So I would say let's sum it up a little bit and then take questions as well, because I mean, people should actually take this opportunity, because they normally just hear from me how great we are, or something like that, more like the company viewpoint from myself. But now they actually have the time to interview a real customer and get some questions on how you are doing things with regards to governance and all the stuff that we talked about. So let's get to that after this summary. So if we could summarize how you did things before using Rencore Governance and how you do them now, what would be your summary? Kind of what was the desired state that you wanted to get to with introducing such tooling, and yeah, have you actually met it, or what is still on the, maybe also on the agenda, like the desired state that you want to get to, these kind of things?
The desired state, and I doubt if we'll ever reach it, but the desired state is have all governance requirements and policies in place. But yeah, Microsoft keep on adding components to Microsoft 365, so will not be finished anyway. And have the system set up in a way that it will update and take care of that we adhere to our own governance policies by automation. And that's the main focus for us now, thinking about automation, and we're doing it also in a controlled way. First build one and then another one, so people get accustomed that they get an email from a system who says, hey, you need to do this, or we need to, or we're seeing this, what's happening here. And that's it feels that we're more in control. And before we had Rencore Governance, yeah, we were building scripts and combining data manually, etc. And we didn't have an overall picture, an integrated view. We do have all the admin portals, and Microsoft is working on more information about what's happening in the tenant, but still it's totally not on par with Rencore Governance. So it's always had to do, export this and do something here and then do something there. Yeah, and that's not the work we want to do. So yeah, that's the system, the collecting the data and make it visual, being able to share it with people, and also the speed on which we can help people with their questions. Yeah, that's an enormous step forward for us.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much for that. Let's take some questions. Do we have questions, Chrissy, Tiers, or can we? Could I ask the participants to now use the Q&A function? If you have questions, feel free to post them here. Then Tiers and Chrissy will read them out, and we have Ed here trying to answer them. You can also obviously ask product questions, which I would then try to answer.
So
Tiers, do we have something?
We have two already. One comes from Tom Ma. I would be interested in some information how Royal BAM is dealing with provisioning and or approval workflows for Teams or SharePoint sites, since Rencore is not offering that included in the solution.
Yeah, I can tell you a little bit about it. When we first made the step to the cloud, the first thing we did was going to Dynamics CRM. And part of our process was if, for instance, an opportunity came in Dynamics CRM, people wanted to create a SharePoint site connected to it and start working, for instance, on a tender, etc., with the team. When we start implementing that, and that was before I joined BAM, but we still continue to do so, is that we also bought a tool for provisioning a SharePoint site, which was interconnected with our CRM environment. And the tool was built by a partner of us, CTB. And in a later stage, we have been adding, for instance, all kinds of templates to that provisioning tool. The access to the provisioning tool is only available for people in which we call a DMS team. They are close to the business, collecting the requirements from the business, and they are able to say, okay, but this is what you need, this is the kind of project you have, so we'll apply this template for you, or build a new template and help you with generating the site. The site is generated in 15 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes. So that's the current way of deploying SharePoint sites. For the Teams environment, that wasn't covered by the CTB tooling at that point in time, but we built a new intranet based on the Valo technology. And the Valo technology had a component in it to create team sites. It's called Teamwork. So we can create team sites. You might have we can have an excellent discussion about, okay, why do you need two tools and how does it work and what you're going to do on that phase. We currently decided to maintain those tools because now both tools can do the same, but if we make some changes, also there's a benefit. Who will benefit from it? It will cost us time, etc. And we currently have a lot of other things to do. What we are also working on is using new technologies provided by Microsoft in the Power Platform. That's private virtual agents, what we used to call a bot. And we're now doing the first steps to get people interacted with the bot, which is asking all kinds of questions. And based on the questions, we can validate, are you looking for a SharePoint site? Are you looking for a Teams environment? And if we found out, and I think in 99% of the cases we find out and make the good choice, then we fire off one of the two provisioning tools. It has a benefit that the user has to log a ticket in our service desk system, and on the other hand, the bot is also working at 10 o'clock in the evening. So if somebody needs a bot or on a Saturday, he can ask, do the questioning, the Q&A session, and 15 minutes later, the team site or the SharePoint site is available for that user. We haven't opened up it for all users. Still open up for the teams, the DMS teams, as I mentioned. But we are thinking of, okay, our users get more experience, know better what they need, and if we enhance the Q&A phase, we would be able to open up the private virtual agent or the bot to all our users, so they can request a team site, etc. We don't have any approval steps in between, because we can generate as much sites as we want in our environment, as long as we don't hit our storage allowance. So that's what we don't do. That's it, how we provision. Hopefully that answers the question.
I believe so. Yes, thank you for that. One more question from Bart Abels. Do you combine Rencore with integrating with Azure runbooks, or how do you combine governance with automation processes?
Yes, there's a lot of options for automation, integrating automation also from the Rencore piece. Yes, we sometimes use Azure runbooks, logic apps. We do some Power Automate stuff there. Depending on, sometimes we already have some scripting or some components of which we know that works fine. And then the first choice is, okay, can we integrate them in the automation piece of Rencore? And if we can't, no, then we build something new. But yes, we do both. Use Azure, use webhooks, etc. So Azure functions, whatever is necessary to automate.
And we hopefully take a lot of your plate in the future when we have more automation actions available also.
Yeah, but that's the same as we started with Rencore Governance. We're making the first steps, and you're also improving, and that's also a way how we can help each other getting further.
Yeah, exactly. Tiers, do we have more questions, or were these the 2 questions? If we don't have more questions, people use the time and ask questions. We still have some 10 minutes.
No more questions for now.
All right. So then, if no one has any more questions and we don't see anything coming in, then we think we don't want to stress it today.
One more just came in.
Yeah.
One more from Bart. So Rencore can directly call function and runbooks.
Yes.
Quick question, quick answer.
Yeah. Sure. But we haven't explored all the options from the Rencore automation. As I said earlier in the presentation, we are also making the first steps there. But yes, as far as what we've been experimenting with, yes.
All right, perfect. So then if we don't have any more questions coming in, then thanks so much for your time, Ed.
You're welcome.
It was great having you, as always. Nice to chat. And then see you guys all around. Stay safe. Thanks for joining today.
Thank you.